Hello everyone, I'm Cody.
And I'm Liz.
Welcome to Unit 3, Mad Truckers. Now, it sounds like a weird title, and this is going back to the trucking situation in Canada. So, many people think Canadians as more of the genteel version of Americans, more proper and more kind and amicably, resolving conflicts and that kind of version, but like a distant relative to America. Let's say it that way. Genteel.
Genteel.
Amicably.
Amicably.
Now, recently in the news, with truckers specifically, there is some conflict and some protests that have been happening, and that's all due to the COVID-19 situation, and specifically a recent change where trucking between Canada and the US, the Canadian government is making Canadian citizen truckers to be vaccinated to re-enter. And it doesn't sound like a big problem, but because 85% of truckers are vaccinated, but there's 15% that are not. And that sounds like a small number, but you think about how many truckers there are, 15% can be a lot, be very impactful to the whole industry. And so these people formed a group called the Freedom Convoy, and they drove their big semi-trucks to Ottawa, the nation's capital, and they started blocking streets in and out, and they're just parking the trucks, and they also started blocking the international highway between the US and Canada, which is a big trade passageway, and so that became a big issue. The police, it's very hard to move big trucks.
True.
And when you have to have the training and license to drive it, and so they can't just have anybody drive it away when it's sitting there. So obviously these truckers were very mad. We'll talk a little bit more what will happen later. But have you ever visited Canada?
I have actually. So I grew up in Connecticut, but my mother's hometown is right on the border with Canada. And so they moved back there after I left the US. And so whenever I go to visit, we drive across the border. So you just cross a couple of bridges. There's a big river between them. Cross a couple of bridges, and it's actually in New York State, but it's closer to get to Ottawa, which you mentioned, than it is to get to New York City.
Wow, okay, so you really live north.
Yeah, Ottawa is only about maybe an hour and a half away from my parents' home. So we, cross over there all the time, or we did before COVID. Obviously, I haven't actually been back to the US post-COVID, so haven't had a chance, but it's much harder to cross the border these days because of all of the travel restrictions and all of that. But you just bring your passport, get in your car, and zoom off to Canada.
And how different do you think Canada is compared to America?
It's not that different. The things that you notice when you cross the border is that all of the traffic signs are in kilometers and not miles.
There's some changes there.
So you got to get used to the numbers and really high numbers compared to the U.S. signs. So they're on the metric system. That's one change. And there's a huge kind of just northeast of Ottawa, a huge French population in French Canada. So that's a little bit different.
I see.
Other than that, it's colder and there are less people.
Yeah. They got vast amounts of land that are just the wilderness. In the north.
Right. But they're basically English speakers and there's not, a big difference.
Right.
Have you ever been to Canada?
Never.
You're much farther.
Yeah, way far in the south. So I got a much longer trip to go than you. But I've kind of wanted to visit to kind of the Calgary area, the mountains and natural landscape. My uncle's wife, so I can say my aunt, she's from the Prince Edward's area.
Edward Islands.
Edward Islands, that's what it is. And she grew up all her life there and moved to the U.S. in her late 20s, and then got married to my uncle. So her family's all there, but I've obviously never been there. It's not my side of the family.
Right.
So one day maybe, because my fiance has family in Toronto. So there's a very good reason for me to go to Toronto. But I don't know anything else about Canada. I have a friend from there, but not much different. I feel like they're American, just a little nicer maybe.
Sometimes you can hear it in the accent, just a little bit.
Yeah, they got a little bit of accent.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Now the language focused. First up, had plus past perfect. So for my example, Texas had been a country until it joined the Union in 1845.
That's true. Okay. The second point is as. So, for example, as it gets warmer in Korea, the air quality seems to get worse.
That's a terrible correlation. Yes. All right, well, that's it for our preview section. We'll see you on the review.